Now, I was just talking about because I've been with my lady 6 years, and in that time, there are a lot of things that you learn to deal with about your mate. But then there's those things that set you off, and all of a sudden you're mad. Now, when you get to those situations, and now my lady and I, we can communicate with each other. We can basically get that off and get that taken care of. But what happens when something that somebody's been doing for a long time happens and it comes to a head? How do we explain that to our mate, Jason? How do we actually sit down with them and make it do it so that we can grow and not hinder our relationship?
I would say just be honest. I mean, me and my girlfriend, we do this all the time. I mean, we've had some situations, heated arguments and the whole nine, but we sit down and we really be honest about how we feel. And I tell her, well, I reacted that way because you talked to me like this, or vice versa. And then she'd tell me why she became angry. Because sometimes when our partners get mad at us, we don't really understand why they're mad. But then we don't go into an in-depth conversation, in a calm conversation, to find out the reasons why they're mad. And then when you start asking those questions, why did you get mad? Then you start pinpointing the insecurities and the reasons why. And when you start to see the reasons why your partner's reacting in that way and why they got that mad, then you can start to be more sensitive about how you deal with them in that manner. And then your partner can say, well, okay, I have that problem. I need to work on this. And then you can support him or her in working on that problem. So whenever it flares up again, you can be like, baby, like remember we talked about earlier, just calm down, it's okay, and talk them through it. Because that's how you break the thought patterns, is when you acknowledge exactly that at the time when it's happening, when it's flaring up again, acknowledge it, keep on acknowledging it, and over time it'll slowly go away. You'll break the pattern.
Now, one thing I learned here, and that you have to that you hit on here, is we actually have to learn how to speak to each other, because I'm not trying to bring in a particular race or creed in this, but we as black folks, I know that I can get shot over by my lady, and it could happen all the time. And I don't think it's just black folks, but we get to this thing to where we have to unlearn what we know, because normally it becomes heated. There's yelling, and then all of a sudden there really isn't a calm conversation. It's just normally like, we both got mad, let's forget it, and then it flares up again. But, there's none of those reminders. I think that in the whole process, how do we unlearn things? I know it doesn't happen overnight, but how do we unlearn what we've learned? Say, for example, let's go back to your example about romantic comedies. No one's going to have that love. I guess it's okay to hope for it, but to actually think it's going to happen is a whole different thing. So, how do we unlearn ourselves from that type of stuff?
Okay, well, first of all, I would say, this is going to sound a little extreme, but cut your television off. Spend more time just sitting down and talking to each other. Play games. Bring out the board game. Play Uno. Do something. Because, back in the day before television, we had to actually communicate with each other. When I got rid of my television, it was weird for my friends to come over and me to not have a television on. And I thought I'm like, let's sit down and talk. Let's talk. How many times you go over somebody's house and they got a television on, y'all just sit down and watch TV? Why would you go over somebody's house and not communicate with them? That's where we are now as a society. And I want to give you a hint on. I want you to do an experiment. Next time your girlfriend start wilding out and yelling and screaming, do this. Walk straight up to her and just hug her real tight and don't say nothing. I guarantee you she stop yelling and she might start crying.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Don't say a word. Just hug her.
Mm-hmm. Does that go vice versa, or does that just?
Yeah, if a woman does that to her man too, if he's yelling, if she just walks up to him and just hugs him, it'll shut it down. And then once you do that, they'll calm down, and then you can say, okay, what are you really mad about? And then she'll probably say, well, when I was little, such and such, and that reminded me of, and then you could get to the root of the problem. But you can't get to the root of the problem when somebody is really emotional like that, so you got to dead it. And that's one of the methods you can use to dead it. Because when people are yelling and screaming, they're speaking and yelling from a space of pain. But when you show them that unconditional love without saying a word, it shuts it helps, like it's like putting a Band-Aid on the pain, or putting like some kind of medicine on it, so it's not as painful.
Yeah, and that's real deep, because that's the first time I've actually heard that. But you see it a lot when you're younger. When you fall off a swing or something, you just beside yourself, and your mother don't say anything to you until she got you in her arms and hugging you, and the next thing you know, she'll just say something to you, and that just makes it all better. I mean, it's a concept we've always had, and I actually, when you thought about it, it reminded me of a scene from The Fresh Prince when the Fresh Prince's dad had abandoned him, and he was sitting there yelling, and that's all Uncle Phil did to him was hug him.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that scene. Yeah, that's exactly how it would go down, and he started crying. That's exactly how it would go down. So the thing is, when your woman or your man yells at you, what happens is it triggers your ego, and you start yelling back. Why are you yelling? Because look, I'm still guilty of that. Sometimes I do it, but I'm aware. And I'm like, oh, I gotta stop. I'm just being more and more aware. The more and more aware I am of it, the next time it pops up, I can like stop myself more. I'm more aware to stop it. So, that's what it is. It's about getting a person in that place. You can't let your ego get you back in a shouting match to yelling back. So put your ego to the side and just realize that your mate that's yelling at you, your partner that's yelling at you in that moment, is yelling from a space of pain. So when you can realize that too, it also helps you have more compassion for them in that moment, because they're not doing it because they want to hurt you. They're doing it because they're hurt.